And we're now going to be using the trade listing value with asset quantity struct. So we're going to have a asset listed, asset requested, and then an amount of that asset requested that we want in return, and then the fulfilled Boolean. So let's copy these three functions for fulfilled trade request, claim fulfilled trade request, and cancel trade request. Oh, and we also need the post trade request. And starting with the post trade request, we're going to change this to post trade request with quantity, fulfill trade request with quantity, cancel fulfilled trade request, or excuse me, claim fulfilled trade request with quantity, and cancel trade request with quantity. And the only difference here, we're going to add asset request quantity, which will be an arc4 uint64. And then in the trade listing value class, we're going to change this to trade listing value with asset quantity. And then before the Boolean, we're going to add this asset amount requested value. Which will be asset request quantity. And when we create the box, we're also going to need an extra 8 bytes. So we have the 32 bytes for the key, plus the 8 bytes for the counter. Then we have 3 uint64s, and we're going to have to convert this to an arc4 uint64. So 8, 16, 24, so plus 24, plus the Boolean value. So we're going to need a total of 26,000 algo, microalgo, plus the 2,500 for box creation. So this is 28,500. And then this value, we can just subtract 40, or we can just do the math again. So 24 plus the Boolean value, 8, 16, 24 plus Boolean. So we need a box with size 25. And then for the fulfill trade request with quantity, we're going to change the trade listing value to trade listing value with asset quantity. And then we're just going to add an assert that the asset trade fulfillment dot asset amount is equal to the listing value dot asset amount requested. For the claim fulfilled trade request with quantity, we're going to change the class as well from trade listing value to trade listing value with asset quantity. And the only other thing we need to change here is that the asset amount we're sending will be the listing value dot asset amount requested. And for the cancel trade requests with quantity, we can actually keep everything here the same, but we do need to change the trade listing value to a trade listing value with asset quantity. And we're going to compile this after saving. I'll go hit compile. And there should be no errors, but let's see. 326, we have an error. And this is because we need to get the native version of the asset request quantity to convert it to an arc4 uint64. And on line 397, we also need to get the native version here to unwrap this arc4 uint64 into a uint64. Save. I'll go hit compile. And I just realized we didn't do a cancel listing request for our asset for asset. So we're going to just quickly create one and test it out before we Move forward. Cancel asset for asset listing request. And for this, we can just change the method name. Cancel trade request. And the cancel trade request has these three. The listed asset, listing name, and transfer fee. So it's essentially the same. And we'll test an asset for asset listing and try canceling it just to make sure that works. And listed assets, not listing asset. And it failed to get the box name. And that's because we're working with counter 2, since this is the second listing. And we got that to work. So now we're going to copy the asset for asset listing up to the cancel asset for asset listing and paste. And number 10 will be fulfill trade requests, then complete and cancel. So let's start with number 9. And the only difference here, and we'll launch a new contract first. Place in the new app ID, go back to number 9. And the only difference, I'm going to go down here, post trade request with quantity. We need to include a asset request quantity. Everything else is the same, so asset to list, asset request, and box fee MBR payment. We need to adjust the amount, which we stated would be 28,500. And then we need to add the asset request quantity here. So let's say we want 5 of asset number 2. And let's change the name of the ABI method to post trade request with quantity. And we should be good here. And let's give this a shot. Perfect. And let's try fulfilling. So for fulfillment, we need to make sure we send 5 of asset number 2. And then we will confirm the arguments are the same. For number 10, fulfill trade request quantity. And we have the asset trade fulfillment, the asset transfer fee, the asset listed, listing name, so everything's the same. We just need to make sure that we send 5 of asset 2. We're working with counter 1, the first listing, and we need to change the ABI method name. And let's give this a shot. And the issue is here. We assert the trade fulfillment.asset amount is equal to 1, but that contradicts here where we assert the asset trade fulfillment.asset amount is the listing value.asset amount requested. So we could just remove this line and recompile. There we are. Launch the contract. go to our .env, paste in the new app ID, and try an asset for asset quantity listing again. And then let's try fulfilling it. And it looks like we're good here. And let's try claiming the asset we just got, which is asset 2, and we received 5. So we're just going to change this to claim fulfilled, trade request with quantity. And this will be exactly the same otherwise, I believe. And we just got to make sure we opt in to asset 2. I believe we already are. So I'm just going to remove this. And let me just make sure the variables match here. The parameters. So asset transfer fee, asset requested, and listing name. So we should be good. Let's run this, see if we get any issues. So we're good. And if we go to AlgoKit, we'll see we received in the group 5 of test asset 2. And then we're going to try making another listing, same exact listing, and attempt to cancel it. And this will be cancel trade request with quantity. So we just made a listing. This will be counter 2. And we canceled a asset for asset quantity listing.